Welcome. This is our sixth webinar that we've been hosting here with Lightline. This is a special webinar that we're doing. It's a little different than the product sessions that you might have logged on to before, or some of the other CEU accredited presentations that we had. Dan was doing his dimming presentation on Friday, and Deb Gottesman was doing a presentation I think the Friday before. So, but once a week we have the CEU up and available. So this one's a little different. We've got a number of panelists on board today. We've got some contractors here joining in an open discussion, kind of an open platform, and we're just going to talk about some subjects and get their opinions and learn a little from them. So this webinar is our contractor open forum. Again, we'll just go over some topics and have a conversation, and everybody's pretty much live here, so the panelists have audio, but if you've got questions, just type them into the little prompted question field and we can address it at the end, and we'll have some fun. A lot of you folks would know me, Steve McMullen, National Sales Manager for Canada for Lightline. You'll get to see my shining face there when the screen isn't up, or the top side. That's a pretty good picture. It was just last week. Shaved my head. Totally kidding. That's not a new picture. Those are better days. But let's move on to gentlemen with hair, shall we? So we've got a number of guys on the line here. We're just missing a few, waiting for one to join on, but we'll carry forward, and when they link up, we'll bring them in. We've got Mr. Joe Scally joining us, President of ProTech Electric, based out of Richmond Hill, just kind of around the corner from Lightline. So, old friend of ours, we know Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hi, guys.
We've got Matt Bishop, who's the owner of Caltech Electrical, based out of Calgary.
Hi.
Matt's actually a returnee, a last-minute addition here. We had an unfortunate dropout. Guy couldn't make it, but Matt was there and available.
I was just about to eat lunch.
He asked for the recording, though, so we could repeat the same answers we did this morning.
That's right, yeah.
We're just waiting for John Lindy to join up. I think we're just trying to connect with him on the other side. But we have Mr. John Benoit. He's the president of Benoit Electric, based out of Halifax.
Hi, guys.
Hey, John.
Hey. All right. So it's an interesting thing, lighting, and we'll talk about some subjects in a little more detail. But what's interesting working for manufacturers, you always kind of consider yourself a bit of an expert. Different parts of the industry deal with lighting differently, right? As contractors, not 100% of your day is lighting. As designers, you could be designing different parts of it, specifiers, it's all different, right? But what we do know is that a lot of times, as installers, as ECs, things get to site, stuff changes, site requirements change. And what we're curious here, and what I'm excited to get an answer on is, to yourselves, what is good lighting? How important is it? And how do you work with your clients to help them understand the value of something like an upgrade, or help them understand, what has to change on site to allow them through some type of limitation? So, Joe, you jumped on there. Why don't I let you go first? And
Well, it all depends. I think there's a few different aspects of lighting. One is residential lighting. I treat that kind of completely different than a lot of commercial space. And a third is really like task lighting and also exterior lighting. So I treat them all completely different. I guess we deal with our clients, residential. Well, everything shifted to LED, so I don't even want to talk about any other type of lighting really. Really, LED is the only thing that's really makes sense in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So,
this day.
Really, as for the commercial clients, a lot of time color becomes really, really important. You could set different moods, dimming, controls play a large component of that as well. Color as well, and energy savings overall, right? So that's why lighting right now is, I think, key for everyone, right?
Definitely a number of things to talk to them about, and I think that's about the most valuable piece that you need to have, right? Is some tools to be able to have that conversation, or at least to help educate, right? John, what are your thoughts?
I'm in the same boat there. I think mean, quality of the manufacturer for sure. And with our guys, it's ease of installation as well. I mean, there's a lot of garbage, on available, and I think of our guys. I mean, we're showing products all the time, and I mean, we like light line stuff because it's quality, price point is good, and the ease of installation is normally good. We, like I say, there's some stuff that retail outlets will sell in bulk, and the quality is just not there.
Right.
And also color temperature across the SKUs. We want to make sure the color temperature from is there across the whole line. So if we use say 4-inch limbs or lunas, the color temperature is identical to the under cabinets we're using.
Yeah.
So there's no variance in color temperature.
I mean, there's certainly a lot to that. When you get into types of luminaires, different manufacturers and different types of luminaires, color consistency is tough, right? Because obviously not everybody, from carving it out of stone, builds their own fixtures, right? It's usually an assembly of different components that are put together. So it can be hard, especially if you're matching in 3000 K as a color temperature. It could be close, plus or minus. It's going to show a difference though, depending on the manufacturers for sure. And in process for, relaying that to your client, is it something that, you speak on behalf of usage before samples? What's kind of your team's go-to on that, John? What do you use?
Our go-to slim or?
No, as far as the value of an upgrade, discussing that with a client. You talked about color temperature, you talked about brand, reliability.
We have a light line sample board that we can go from a slim to a Luna, and when we snap those lights on for a customer, the difference, the glare of the straight flat panel to the Luna is just a drastic difference. And if we can get that slim out, the existing one out, and the Luna in that same hole,
Sure.
I mean, it's cost for the benefit you get is it's an easy sell, we find.
Right, for sure.
I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah.
Matt, I know you're on a beach somewhere, but what do you think?
Good lighting, yeah, I think is lighting that achieves whatever it is you're trying to achieve with your lighting. Sometimes the best lighting can be lighting that you don't actually notice is there because the room's just well lit. I think good lighting could be like lighting that's for accents. So in in a lobby, or we're displaying some artwork, you'll have like an area that's well lit, and then for depth, there's areas that aren't well lit. So I think it's kind of it kind of depends on the situation, but that's to me what good lighting is. Understanding the value of an upgrade, I think we do a lot. We don't do as much of those cost savings anymore because everything, as mentioned earlier, is LED now. But there is that. There's also the cost comparison of product one versus product two. And then just what it is, your value of your dollar, what you're getting. So maybe certain product is a little more money, but it's more reliable and achieves what it is you're going for. Maybe it's flexible.
Right.
That would be my my input.
And sometimes, it's just in general working with the client, right, to help them understand, if there is a limitation or if there's something they're trying to accomplish, letting them know what options they've got. That's great. Thanks, guys.
Steve, can you mind if I interrupt just real quick?
By all means, yeah, go ahead.
John mentioned a board. John, did you make that board yourself, or was it provided by Lightline?
Lightline.
Okay, Steve, I need a board.
Yeah, what?
There's a funny story to it, Joe, and I'll let Ian tell
is
it
this
to you. But he'd been asking for that thing for a couple of years, and we kind of said, sorry, and we just don't need that yet. It's totally fine. Ian was right all along,
Well,
and he's
I'll tell you,
writing some pretty good comments right now.
To be quite honest with you, I think it's even last week we had a client who their designer wanted slim discs throughout their whole house. And I said to the owner, I said, you guys, I don't recommend it. I would go with the Luna. And, come in different sizes. I sent them the specs, and then he wanted to see samples. So I had to get 4 different samples to bring to them. If we had the board, just plug her in.
Just plug her in. Yeah, it does make it a little easier. Now, it depends on the profile size of the samples, Joe. We'll hook you up. You're not too far away. So when we're free to leave our houses, we'll get you covered.
Thank you.
No problem. So as a manufacturer, it's pretty common for us to kind of ask ourselves these questions. We try to, use our best judgment to figure, how does the contractor know what to do? What is he working with? Are we in conversation with them? And a lot of times, we just don't necessarily have the right answers. So we're just curious, what influences your lighting choices, and what steps do you take when you're given the opportunity to design a space? Joe, do you want to jump on that? Did we lose you?
Who are you talking to, Steve? Sorry.
Oh, I just said, hey, Joe, did you, I just said senior.
Sure.
Your microphone was on there.
First of all, I think again, are we talking residential or commercial?
It's whatever you want. I mean, again, open conversation here.
Typically, it's two different type of
both.
clients,
Let's
right?
do both.
Well, two different type of clients. So for the residential, it's really what the client's looking for. No two are the exact same. Whether you put more or less, I think color is really, really important. And again, control is important, that you're able to dim those fixtures that you install. Even if you have a couple extra, let's say Lunas in place, at least you could dim it,
right,
so that it doesn't seem that it's too bright. And the color, again, is also critical, because I've seen guys put in 4,000 to 5,000, which I think is ridiculous in a residence. For commercial space, it depends. If it's office space, you just want it to be very comfortable for the client, enough lighting for tasks and to work, and also controls. You want to be able to dim that, or daylight harvesting. So those are, I look at that, what the client really needs. Right?
Makes sense. There's a couple of things in there that steer a little into question number 3, but we'll let John and Matt jump in for a minute or two first. John, what did you have for thoughts on that? You definitely do some design builds and stuff yourself, so.
Yeah, my thoughts are pretty close to that. Identify what the customer wants. There's a full gamut of products out there. We usually try to start at the higher end and work down.
Sure.
Because anybody can supply a cheapy slim. So, and we do a ton of slims, and same with under cabinet. It's just like what the customer wants for controllability. They want it dimmed, and we try to have products, especially in the residential side, that can be everything can be dimmed, so they can walk into a room and have a different fixtures throughout their kitchen, we'll say, and be able to dim them all, same color, temperature, dim everything down to the same color or light level. So I think, finding what the customer wants, I guess.
It's a bit of a trialed process a little when you think of that custom resi sort of space where you're working with the client, addressing maybe some of the things that they're hoping to achieve with their lighting in their space, and kind of working together to make sure that it's then going to control properly. Things like that are tools that you're using.
And we also try to have as many samples available to customers, so we'll leave them behind. They can check out the samples on the weekend with their designer or their spouse. So as many samples as we can have, plug it in, dim it, the whole works.
So it's more like choosing blinds, or picking types of paint finishes for your bedroom, right?
And different samples for the same product. So here's a Luna, here's a flat panel, here's an indirect. Try them, and we'll pick them up next week.
Nice. Matt, what do you think?
I'm just going to go over my list again from earlier, which is good. You ask me last on this one every time, and everyone before me gets it really well. So just price point usually starts with that. They have a dollar figure in mind of what they want to spend. Visually appealing, so I'm looking to make sure that the product is going to be okay. It's going to represent me and my design. Also how it looks in the ceiling or on the wall, that it's not just a big glare bomb.
Right.
Ease of install, so once you've picked that product, how well you can install it and make some money. Access to the product, which I think is huge. If you sell 20 pot lights to somebody but you can't get them for 6 weeks, then That's not ideal. Two more. Failure rate is huge. There's a lot of knockoffs out there, and I find that your failure rate's really big. And if you're the one providing them, you're the one that's warranting them. I know we'll go over that a little bit later. And I can't remember the last one. It was something like, I can't
catch it on the
remember.
recorded version.
yeah. Oh, I know what it was. It was the samples, like you guys have been very generous with. Is I like to take a sample with me to site, plug it in, leave it behind, maybe install it, into the grid in the T-bar or whatever, and let them have it for a week or whatever, just to get used to it, see if they like it, see how the colors help on their paint or their carpet or whatever, right? So,
do you guys find a similarity between, Joe, you mentioned two, you sort of stressed two things that aren't necessarily similar, being residential and commercial. But, Matt's comment there just about utilizing a sample and leaving it with the client for a while. Is that something that's probably a bit of a tried method that works?
Well, I think it also depends on the client. So we've had some applications where I've actually used the Lightline Luna over a much more expensive fixture that was on a spec. And what I did is installed two of them in an area for them, and I let them decide, and they came back and chose the Luna.
Interesting.
Yeah. And mostly when you're dealing with offices, I guess, or, retail or office, you're better off giving more lighting than less lighting, right?
Sure.
You're not necessarily setting moods in there unless it's a boardroom or whatever have you, something more specific, right?
There's another question later that I was going to ask, but I think it's actually suiting right now to touch on a little bit. Joe, do you find you have some design control even in commercial spaces when you get that type of opportunity? I mean, you mentioned, it's likely a spec, it's detailing a certain product, and then you get to a point with the customer. Like, how do you work through that? Like, is it something where you see it on there or the client asks you, or is it just sort of verbatim by the spec and then you get it in and then they say, hey, I don't like that?
Well, that's a complicated question because
it wasn't supposed to be easy.
No, because a lot of times if there's a specification and you try to change that specification, and you're going to rub somebody the wrong way.
Of course.
Especially the consultant who specified it, whoever is putting that package together. So it's a fine line. So every case is kind of different. If I can recommend, let's say if a client has a certain budget and they want to change what's there or something is not available, then I could come in and suggest.
Right.
That's on something where there's specifications. If it's not, and I have an input on the design, then that's where I
makes it a little easier.
Have more freedom and choose what I prefer.
Of course.
Steve,
Okay.
there's a comment from Todd Miller, says, I don't know if other brands have the dim to warm, but of what we sell, that feature makes the difference between brands. The thought that I had was, do you find that the dim to warm is good, or do you find the dim to warm is bad? The reason I ask is that my line of work is pretty much exclusively commercial, and I find that dim to warm is usually not well received with like designer type people where I am, because as it goes warm, it's changing the color palette in a room, like whether the carpet and floor and whatever. So I just thought Todd's comment was interesting, and I was wondering if he finds the dim to warm is ideal or dim to warm is not ideal.
We can let him respond. Yeah, I'm sure he'll write back
back
there.
Yeah,
that sounds good. If you see it, by all means, pop it up. That's a good question, though. Color temperature is certainly something that's unique to people, right? My wife is an example. She does laboratory work, and when we moved into our new house, everything was supposed to be as blue as possible, as white as possible, 5K. It's not a lab. Let's meet in the middle. But yeah, it's definitely a conversation that can be had on color temperature for sure. The advancements from LED have given us a pretty cool ability to put fixtures and build lighting into spaces and really kind of work within the framework of the space, right? In a home, we can now put all LEDs in the walls and in the ceilings, and there's no heat restrictions, and the performance is incredible. And in commercial, there's no ballasts anymore. You've got drivers, but they can be on board or they can be remote, and there's so much more flexibility with the types of products that are used. And with all of that, the question is starting to drive back into whole home control, or types of control systems. And the question is, how does the importance of controls influence those types of design and lighting choices? And Matt, maybe I'll let you go first here, since you didn't get to go first in the last session.
Sure. So I think importance of controls is huge. One thing, when I think of controls, I think of like lighting sweeps inside a high rise, because that's where I am a lot. So I think that's a little bit outside of the lights reach, because it's basically power on, power off. However, what I do like with the Lightline product is the controls on the fixture themselves, where you can dim your wattage and you can change color temperature. So when we go to controls in that sense, I think that's huge. That's made lots of sales for me, where I've got a product where I can say, if a tenant in this area wants it to be whiter or bluer or whatever, you can do this. And if you want to change it to something warm, maybe in the kitchen, then they can change that. The other angle is in like a common area, like a hallway, maybe they'll turn their wattage down a little bit so that it's still lit, but it's not glaring. So I think controls on the fixtures themselves are huge, because if they do want to change, it doesn't mean a new fixture. Also, It doesn't mean calling out an electrician for the building operator or whatever, even though I'd like to come out and charge them for going and doing the work. They like the ability to pop in and like flip a switch and have it be adjusted on the fly. So
it's simplicity, right? It's flexibility, for sure.
Yeah, it's huge.
Well, and it's kind of interesting too, because as we all know, the trend in the industry is, again, obviously it's changing, and we're moving towards different types of wireless control, different types of other control protocols that aren't necessarily just phase dimming on the wall, right? Mm-hmm. So John, a question for you there on that. I mean, getting into a lot of custom resi, how's your approach on control systems? How does that, or does it, influence your lighting?
It doesn't really at all lately. I mean, years back with the new first generation of LEDs, we had a lot of flicker, and compatibility between dimming systems and the LEDs wasn't quite perfected, I don't think. But now it seems we have no issues with dimming on the residential side. It seems to, in the same idea with color temperatures. And now that we can have the same fixture, and if someone wants, you want to have 5,000 in the garage and 5,000 in closets, and then 3,000 or 4,000 in other areas of the house, we can separate those areas with the same fixture, different like their color temperature. So, but as far as controllability and dimming, we don't see any issues compared to what we had in the past.
Do you find that any types of control systems might be, how do I put it? Is there a correlation between that with the client at all? I mean, do you find, ones where you might put in certain types of downlights would be more synonymous with types of control systems, or are you able to upsell one to the other? What do you find?
No, no real issue with the dimming at all.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, it's obviously a pretty big thing, and certainly always changing. And compatibility, to your point, Sean, was always one of the biggest challenges that we'd run into, even as a manufacturer. I mean, you design these fixtures, and as changes and progression happens with the technology, so does that with controls, right? So there's this continuous kind of moving target forward to make sure your compatibility is in tow. So it's nice to hear. I'm glad to hear that. So LED is a pretty exciting space. There's tons of opportunity, when we get into things like design, architectural, and concept, etc. But one of the big things we run into typically as sales guys, of course, is the challenge to overcome and compete with price-driven products. I think the question is, in terms of lighting and as contractors, how do you deal with that, and how do you differentiate yourself and your business? John, do you want to take that?
Sure. In terms of lighting, how do you do it? Well, we always tell the customer if they supply, the cost of the install will be on the labor side more expensive normally. And we spoke a little bit about failure rates. I mean, we can certainly sell them really cheap fixtures, but that's not what we want. So
Right.
someone says they're going to go to Costco or Home Depot to pick up their lighting, we usually sway them by saying that the quality we have for the, and the price point is not hugely great if they're looking at apples and apples. But normally what they're buying is nowhere comparable to the quality we have.
Right.
So we can get around that pretty quickly. We do not install a lot of customer supplied fixtures.
It's always an interesting conversation, and I know, with my team and usually with our sales networking, we talk about these things and we try to think of, what are the scenarios, what are the tools that we have to educate or just provide to someone, a client or otherwise. But one thing I wanted to mention, John, that I thought was kind of interesting is you've got a resources section on your website that's kind of cool. And like you give someone a little bit of a hint, right? You can change a light bulb yourself, right? But going beyond that, it's kind of something to give us a call. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Do you have anything else like that, the way you approach your business, other tools you might use?
Well, yeah, we work for, whatever, doctors, lawyers, whoever. And, it's very often we hear something like, well, you don't need to be, a rocket scientist to change a plug, or put a light fixture in. But it seems like every Monday morning we have phone calls
Right.
of things we're going to be fixing from a homeowner attempting to do a project on the weekend. So we usually, most of our customers know, they shouldn't be touching anything electrical other than changing a light bulb. So we pick up new customers with those phone calls on Monday mornings, but I think the majority of our customers pretty much don't touch any electrical.
Right.
Take care of that because they know plus it gets expensive when we start making trips out there to change things. So we really don't have any real issues with explaining to customers. It's a very short conversation a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Let them know that we should be doing your electrical and not you.
Yeah, it was something I thought was kind of neat, to be able to have that quick little tool, just helping to drive a little more traffic your way, or at least giving somebody a quick answer. Right?
Yeah.
That was neat. Joe, what do you do in your business that helps differentiate?
Basically, I use the term that, if it's something, I'm going to use the term offshore, even though I call it for what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Brands, I basically tell them it's not something I would install for myself. It's not always about the price, as Matt mentioned earlier. You just want quality product. It's important for us because if it's a quality product, we know what the return is going to be as far as lighting is going to be, and also we don't want to go back. Ease of install is mentioned a number of times, but also return is where it costs you money as a contractor. We don't want issues. We don't want problems. We don't want to go back and change a driver, change a fixture, right? So I basically tell them it's quality. You want quality installed. This is your house, or this is your office. This is your building. Would you be satisfied with that? So I'll give you one example that I did use a few years ago to a facility manager in a mall.
Sure.
They wanted to do some lighting in their underground, underdeck parking lot. So sorry, it wasn't a light line product. But we installed 4 different samples from 4 different reputable manufacturers that I would kind of recommend for that installation. And he came back to me about a week later saying that somebody walked into their office and they had this other product they wanted me to install. I didn't recognize the name of it, and all of us in the industry know who are the main players. And I installed it. It was a fraction of the cost of what we were going to supply. And I said to him, very simply, I go, this is a glare bomb. It's the color's off. It's terrible. And I go, would you be willing to risk your job on this? It's your name, your job. Would you be willing to risk it? If not, then why would you even recommend this? Just to save a couple $100? There's 600 fixtures. That's item one. Item two, I go, contact your consultant that does a lot of work in this building. Would he put his name on it? And that kind of straightened them right out immediately almost, right? So.
Well, there's a pretty good examples actually, Joe, because it's always interesting to me to find, when you really compare kind of cost metrics or the scale of cost between different opportunities. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be lighting, but lighting is more recent in its sort of assertion that now, the recognition of quality and what you can do with the lighting is becoming more, I feel, something that, the public is recognized, right? They're understanding that, for a couple $100 difference, you're actually getting something that's considerably better, or maybe it's $1,000. Doesn't matter the size of the job, but sometimes it just takes, a bit of a hint to say, look, there's other options here that aren't actually going to destroy the bank for you. It's not like going from a Lamborghini to a Pinto.
Right.
We're finding something really very much on that mid-range that's going to work. Matt, what did you have jotted down from this morning?
I didn't jot anything down for this one. I think we were just winging it at this point.
Freeform?
Yeah, you asked me last again on this one. So basically they covered it. Something we do differentiate ourselves. We take a lot of pride in it, which most guys do. That's why we are where we are. So when I'm done with an install or a design, I want, if someone walks in and sees it and says, where did you get that? Or how did you do that? I want to be proud that it's mine or it has my name on it. We have come across that several times where someone says, I've got my own product, or we're going to get it from wherever. It's the same factory, all that kind of stuff you hear. And I'm okay with the install as long as it meets for us at CSA. So there's that. I would prefer not to. And that's more of like a generic, just throwing in a fixture somewhere. But we'll just take our warranty off of it. We'll install it, but we aren't going to come out and service the product, or if it's dimming or it's flickering, it's not doing what you want it to do. It's not really our issue, but I would try really hard to steer everyone away from subbing their own offshore product. So. Yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense, right? You brought it up, and it's fairly common to hear it, but gentlemen, you're saying, our brand is obviously attached to that, and we set a certain criteria for us to deliver our product. And I think that's a very important thing. And it's not just lighting, it's everything in general. You look at goods you consume, right? Whatever it is, it's quality, or it can be different levels of, and sometimes it's not. And you go through it and you figure it out for yourself. Hopefully it doesn't cost you too much. So we've got a number of people that have joined in from all over the place, coast to coast, up and down. We had a gentleman on the panel from the States earlier today. But everyone that's on is likely involved in lighting to some degree. I'd mentioned earlier, it could be somebody selling from the manufacturing side, somebody on the wholesale side, contractors like yourselves, or even designers, specifiers. And this is actually the last question, guys. But what do you think the lighting industry could be doing better? John?
We've come a long way. I'm not sure what the future holds for better products out there.
It's very much an open-ended question here.
Yeah. Maybe there's a lot of manufacturers, I know that. I mean, when slims first came out, we do a ton of slims and a lot of under cabinet lighting. I'm not sure. We're pretty happy what's out there being in the industry as long as I have been, and having T12 lamps and then T8 and T5 and came from the industry where that was the norm for so long. Now we have the flat panel 2x4s and 2x2s that are just a dream to install. It's like cheating. It's like installing a slim these days. It's like it's
Simplicity.
what we had to go through years ago to put a pot light in to putting a Luna in. Now it's so I'm not sure, guys. I didn't really spend much time on that question. I
Yeah,
think
it's okay.
manufacturers have done a great job.
You know, John, an acceptable answer is, you know what,
Yeah.
things are pretty good right now, and it's working for my business, and that's great. I mean,
Some manufacturers definitely go a little further than others. So and Lightline seems to be coming out with new, evolving fixtures all the time, which is exciting to see.
Sure.
Some manufacturers come out with a just a low end slim, and then they stay there. It seems there's nothing else. But I mean, our manufacturer's rep down here for Lightline does a good job by promoting different products. So we like Lightline for that reason.
Good.
It's always evolving.
Nice. Joe, you can, I'm sure, agree, and maybe you've got some other insights.
Yeah, I agree with John, and I think lighting the last 5 years has come a long way. And again, I'm a guy who's been involved for many years. I don't want to age myself, but it was very simple. It was either mercury vapor, metal halide, or high pressure sodium. And then we went down to fluorescence, then we went to T8, and that was a big jump, and then maybe some T5. But if you look at the last 5 years, it's constantly evolving and changing, which is fantastic. The one thing I would like to see changed in our industry is somehow if we can fine tune and eliminate some of these inferior products that are flooding our marketplace.
Right.
As far as DLC listing, is if we can be more stringent and that way we more of a reason to try to eliminate some of these other companies that make inferior products.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment for sure. You know, and we face it all the time, and it's, you know, not just one product or the other. You know, it's something that you work with. You know, you find ways to, you know, promote your product or your business or your service one way or another. There's always something that's going to be cheaper. But if there was different metrics to, you know, maybe look at, you know, like you'd mentioned something like DLC or other types of certification bodies that, you know, these things could and could not fit into. I mean, it's possible. Actually, just on that, here's a sort of a side question. Joanna, maybe I'll just toss this to you while we're on the subject. Do you find that amount of, I'm going to call it product availability, growing or shrinking?
I think it's growing. As you drive by, especially in industrial areas, you see signs everywhere, LED lighting. We as contractors are let's say, more educated than the average citizen individual who wants to install lighting. Mm-hmm. But who's to say a guy as a homeowner or even a business individual goes into those places, finds some cheap lighting, and says, "Oh, look, it's LED. They're all the same.
Right.
They look the same. It's white. It's got a great light." And that's, I think they're popping up like crazy everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, they're not there tomorrow. That manufacturer is not there tomorrow. They're there today, but they're not there 2 weeks from now, a month from now, a year from now. Where you go to a reputable product and you use a light line as an example, and you stand behind your product.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, we look at that, the landscape is always shifting, right? And Joe, that's why I'd ask the question is, you know, we're always kind of looking at it going, where do we position? Where do we want to be? Where's the next step in lighting? Where are we going? And something like that obviously influences one angle of how we approach a market, right? And how we go to market. So, yeah, right. Matt, what do you think we could do better as an industry?
Well, the conversation we had in the last session was different than this one. And there was this one comment the guy made, and I thought about talking about it, but he was talking about educating the general public. And in a way, I don't know if that's really necessary because, I mean, there's little things, but that's maybe for a big box store to look into. But like your job as a contractor is to know what it is you're talking about. Like you don't need to know everything about how a combustion engine works to take your truck into the shop. So it helps you to be a little bit educated to know what it is you're looking for. But I think the contractor is the one who, it's on them to know what it is they're talking about, and maybe hear the basic terms from the customer, so that you can then understand what it is they're looking for. So just kind of that. Maybe we'll go whatever back onto that. The other thing was, I had touched on it earlier. Where we are, our agency that reps Lightline is awesome. They always have a sample. They're always willing to talk. They're always willing to make sure your price is good. But I have found with it and similar products is the control of pricing. Like you'll be told that a product is $80, and then you'll go to one wholesaler and it's 90, and you go to another wholesaler and it's 85, and it can get you out of a job, or that product out of a job. And I find that just like some control within the industry, more hands-on control from maybe the top down, just, advertising a price. This is what our set number is going to be. I know there's always workings in the background, but I've had that before where you'll go to one place and that product is higher price than it is across the street or whatever. So
Right.
just more of a consistent price guide or whatever. But
Well, that might actually be something that ties into what Joe was saying too, in a sense. When you've got so much varying competition, you find these differences. And I mean, I don't want to be biased in the conversation at all, but you definitely try to handle that approach, right? But
yeah,
at times, it can make a hard left, right? And
yeah.
you're looking at ways to react.
I think what helps is like what you guys seem to be doing. Lightline seems to be doing really well with their agents, from what I've gathered, is communicating with their agency or agents what it is that their product, like what price their product should be at. And then their agents, like ours anyway, are communicating with us so that I'm seeing that. I don't go into a wholesaler not knowing my price. I usually go into the wholesaler knowing what to expect, like within a couple dollars kind of thing.
Sure.
And I think that helps me catch something like that, which I always, goes back up the ladder all the time. But yeah, I found that you guys have been very open with that, and it's helped. You've educated your agents. So
Sure. And I mean, that is part of it. I mean, you'd mentioned the education piece, but that needs to be it as well, to a degree, right? We don't need to know that this track kit is exactly, $68.42, but you need to be able to know, for your client's sake, that it's under $100.
Yeah,
right, or
that's
something
right.
like that.
Yeah, to do a budget on the fly. Another item I thought of bringing up from last time, I'm dragging on, taking the spotlight here, but
That's all good.
we were talking about, someone in the comments was talking about doing videos or making a video for education purposes. And I was just going to say, you guys should do a YouTube video. And then I popped onto YouTube, and you guys have YouTube. And so maybe on Lightlines and advertising that a little bit more, like maybe expanding on that, like doing the products like you did. I watched a few of them. I subscribed. You're welcome. But doing like some more maybe in depth on one product, or on two products you have that do the same thing but have different values. Like say one's $20, one's $40. Both are great in their own right, but one's better for commercial, one's better for residential, or
Sure.
one's better for a bedroom, one's better for a showroom, kind of a thing. And just making that common to the agent and to the contractor, that they can go, hey, check out this video. This is what that light's all about, on the fly, where maybe you can send them a link as opposed to dropping off a sample if that's maybe not an option, or there's where your sample's out or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to make light out of a unfortunate circumstance right now, I mean, this coronavirus thing has given us a lot of opportunity and time to do things like these webinars, and we've been recording them, and they'll be posted up on our resources section shortly here for everybody to access. So you're dead on, Matt, I think, and keeping things simple and easily accessed. And even if it's small details, that is a big part of the change that is going on in the industry, is these products being maybe color temperature selecting by a switch versus just static color temperature, then into a controllable wireless connection. You've got three things that might exist as the same luminaire.
Yeah.
And it's not a large time frame difference either. We're talking a couple of years, and we've gone from one to the other. So
yeah, for sure.
There was one other thing you mentioned at the beginning there, Matt. I just wanted to touch on it because we use the analogy often, and I actually did earlier the Lamborghini to a Pinto. And you discussed something. Is the education part, and I thought it was worth mentioning. And maybe John and Joe can weigh in on this a little bit too. But when you think of approaching your client, there's obviously a very wide gap if you want to go from a $20 slim to a $300 downlight. But in a lot of cases, I think it's just finding a nice mid-range to be able to have that conversation. John, you talked about the boombox, which is that display that is available to help show. Do you guys think that's like an appropriate type of approach? Considering education can go so deep for a contractor, and it should, compared to an individual that doesn't need to know how an LED actually fires and why it doesn't dim properly and all these things. Would you agree that there's a fine line there, or what do you think? Maybe the question wasn't clear. I rambled a bit.
Who do you want to answer, and what? Sum it up in 10 words or less.
You guys, my question was, Matt had mentioned that you didn't think education needed to be so deep, but where is that fine line? Is it somebody just understanding what a lumen is, or is it them having to know why certain types of luminaires and why certain types of controls don't work?
Sorry, Steve, I didn't know you were, it was directed at me first. I think when we educate our customers, when we deal with them directly. And as Matt mentioned, if you have resources at your side that you could, whether it's the boombox approach, whether it's the video approach, most consumers, again, they're going to look at an LED light. They're just going to compare price point, and that's just the consumer, right? 1,000K is a 3,000K. They don't know the difference. It's not like they're shopping for a car or an appliance where they do their legwork. And from the other end, you guys or whoever, the agency or the manufacturer, they have to reach out to the consultants and push the consultants. That way they're specified on a project, right? So I don't think the consumer is going to go out and do a study and a research of what lighting is going to be best, what pod lights they're going to choose best. That's, as Matt and John said earlier, that's where our professionalism comes in, and that's what we do for a living, and that's what we have to sell to them.
Just making sure the tools are available for you.
Yes.
For sure. All right, gentlemen, that's bringing us close to the hour. So thanks, guys. We'll check in here. I think there's a couple of questions that might have been posted up. We'll ask Ms. Laura John to maybe jump on. Is there anything, Laura, that's left unanswered or open that we can address here?
What is your favorite Lightline product and why?
Good question. John, do you want to start that?
I like the Luna. It's definitely an upgrade from your basic flat panel. Easy to install, and it kind of sells itself once the customer sees the product, I think. And there's a whole family. So we've installed the 3-inch, the 4-inch, the flexibility of the gimbal style. Actually, we installed, it was a 2-inch, I believe, too. So, I mean, you can have your house full of Lunas and have different sizes and color temperatures and variability all over, and they're not glare bombs. So I think I like the Luna.
Nice.
Yeah.
Joe?
I'm going to agree with John. The Luna is I've compared it to other brands that are 2 to 3 times the cost, and it stands up extremely, extremely well. Also, some of your track heads, which no one's mentioned. Your track heads, for the price point and what you're getting, we've installed them at some designer shops. I'm extremely happy with the product.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, the Luna is a great pot light. We've been selling those lots of places. They look great. They have that very professional, clean look to them, like a commercial kind of a look with that. I don't know how to say it. It's like almost a honeycomb kind of interior on them, the reflector, and just nice, clean. You can get 3s, 3.5, nice and small, or go to a 4, a little more little more of what the customer is used to in like a residential application, but also doesn't like, it's not occupying the ceiling with like a 6-inch bucket. And then also the panels I find are great. Those two products, the panel and the Luna, I sell the panel and the Luna a lot. And it's the switches, being able to change output, change color. You know, they see how easy they go in. And then the other thing is we've installed a lot of them, and I can say that like there's not a problem with them as far as warranty or even failure rates. So.
Nice. Good to hear. All right, guys. That's about it for questions. I think that about covers it. Matt, John, Joe, thank you guys very much for joining us here for the Lightline Contractor webinar, the official first open forum discussion. So appreciate your time, gentlemen, really do. And I'll connect with you offline here later on today. But for anyone else that is still hanging out, we do just want to put a reminder there. We've still got a few more webinars on the books and are always open to more topics if you are looking to learn something about a product, or if you think there's a good presentation that we should do. Coming up on Wednesday, we've got a brief history of downlights, why we killed the can. That's done by Lightline here. This weekend, we've got, during the holidays, some homework, if you will, to dig into under cabinet and a few other things. And then next week we get into a couple more smaller seminars, the perfect fixtures for the space. And then we've got Deb coming back. Deb had done a CEU presentation a couple of weeks ago. So she's coming back to give a second one called Get the Lighting You Want, Technology to Specifications and Procurement. So encouraged, of course, to check those out. Otherwise, this is all available usually about a day or so after we have these up and available to those that attended. So thanks again, everybody. Have yourselves a great rest of your day.